Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News. We begin in Ottawa, where Prime Minister Mark Carney and Ontario Premier Doug Ford signed an agreement on Thursday aimed at speeding up the construction of major projects in the province. At a press conference Thursday morning, the two governments say the agreement could be used to cut red tape and speed up development in Northern Ontario's critical mineral-rich Ring of Fire. Proposed development of the area is controversial, with some First Nations in the vicinity who say they've not been properly consulted on the Ontario government's development plans. Premier Ford said his government plans to move ahead with infrastructure to the Ring of Fire development in the spring.
Before today, we've signed historic agreements with Arrowland First Nation, Martin Fall First Nation, Webequie First Nation, who are ready to build. Today's agreement is the last step in our plan to get shovels in the ground this June.
Well, at the exact same time as Ford and Carney were putting pen to paper, some of those First Nations from Treaty 9 were holding a press conference in Toronto. This week, the Ontario Superior Court is being asked to quash a $96 billion lawsuit the First Nations have brought forward in opposition to Ottawa's Bill C-5 and Ontario's Bill 5. Here's some of what Treaty 9 lawyer Kate Kempton had to say earlier today.
This Crown government right here in this province and right up there in Ottawa today are making an announcement about taking over further use and occupation and governance unilaterally over Treaty 9 territory. Yes, they have some agreements with two First Nations, and I would put to you under duress, because this is what this Prime Minister and this Premier have done. They've imposed from 120 years of failed promises and fraudulent agreements a degree of colonialism that has driven people to despair and poverty.
To other news now, an Mi'kmaq chief is calling for an apology from Nova Scotia Premier Houston after police debunked the Premier's claims that unregulated cannabis is laced with fentanyl. Angel Moore brings us that story.
He should most definitely apologize. I don't know if he knows how to, but he should definitely apologize.
That's Tamara Young, the chief of the Pictou Landing Mi'kmaq Nation. She wants Nova Scotia Premier Tim Houston to apologize after the Nova Scotia RCMP and the Halifax Police contradicted Houston's comments he made at a press conference last week.
I've talked to people in law enforcement have told me in this province that they've taken illegal cannabis from unregulated illegal dispensaries and tested it and found that it was laced with traces of fentanyl. So, sometimes I hear, I don't buy from the government supply because I don't get the same buzz. Well, that's probably why.
Houston was defending the province's police directive to crack down on cannabis shops that operate outside provincial legislation, calling it a health issue. But in an email statement, Nova Scotia RCMP and the Halifax Regional Police, HRP, said based on the current information, the Nova Scotia RCMP is not aware of any fentanyl having been detected in cannabis products seized by the RCMP from illegal storefronts in the province. And no fentanyl has been found in any cannabis products seized by HRP from illegal storefronts. Young alleges the cannabis crackdown is really about Mi'kmaq sovereignty.
We know that he's been constantly attacking the Mi'kmaq, and now I feel like our concerns and what we were saying, they are now validated.
Young says at first she was angry at the provincial government's actions.
Just recently in the last week or so, it's brought Nova Scotians together. We are now allies more so than ever, because we all understand that he is really hurting the public.
The Premier's office did not respond to APTN News' request for an interview by airtime. Angel Moore, APTN National News, Jabutuk, also called Halifax.
To Quebec now, where the province introduced Bill 1 last month. This bill proposes a constitution for Quebec. Many have contested Bill 1, and it's even sparked a review from the United Nations to see if it infringes on rights. Some First Nations leaders are concerned over this potential constitution. That includes Ganawage Grand Chief Cody Daibo. He says he shared his perspective when he met with two provincial parties running in the upcoming provincial election. This includes the Parti Québécois and Quebec Solidaire. The Grand Chief has also met with Minister Simone Jolin Barrette, who proposed Bill 1 this past October. The Grand Chief requested the minister to write in law that First Nations will not be included. He says the meeting with the minister did not go well.
And in my meeting with Minister Barrette, he kind of made this whole notion that there's the Quebec nation and then First Nations are underneath that, which we said, no, we're totally separate and distinct. So, like I said, that was one of the clashes of philosophies. Even myself, I had stated, they don't appreciate if I go in there saying, in my view, they're all Canadian. They're all part of Canada. So they're Canadian at the end of the day. He didn't like that as well. But I'm saying, like, reciprocally, then, if you're saying there's a Quebec nation, we're underneath it, that's the same impression that we're getting.
On Wednesday, a weather warning was issued to Winnipeg, Manitoba for a major winter storm with high winds and between 10 to 20 centimeters of snow expected. While many schools and highways shut down on Thursday, Main Street Project, an organization that serves people experiencing homelessness, was working overtime. Here's Julia Ross with more.
Winnipeg's Main Street Project has been supporting communities for over 50 years and has provided weather response through many Manitoba winters.
Our outreach teams are really focused on supporting people who are living unsheltered in the city and doing our best to transport people to safe spaces like pop-up shelters or other spaces that they feel safe going to. When that's not possible for whatever reason, our outreach teams are focused on getting folks the items that they need to stay safe and warm.
Winnipeg has the largest urban Indigenous population, and this August, the 2024 Street Census from End Homelessness Winnipeg reported that out of the 2,469 people experiencing homelessness on November 5th, 2024, 79.9% were Indigenous. Main Street Project accepts monetary donations along with food and currently warm clothing, which helps them help others. Director of Development Cindy Titus says that layers are key to staying warm and to dress top down.
Keeping your head warm with a toque, scarves, mittens, lots of layers, snow pants, warm socks, and good winter boots, and of course winter jackets and things like that. So donations are always needed, whether that's financial donations or clothing donations.
Main Street Project has a year-round outreach van on the road, citywide 24/7, and during the winter months, the organization uses 2 vans across the city to have a wider reach.
During extreme weather like this blizzard that we're experiencing, it is important to remember that people experiencing homelessness are our neighbors and community members, and we really all need to be looking out for each other.
If you see anyone struggling or are concerned for, don't hesitate to call 211 for a wellness check, and always call 911 if there is an emergency. Julia Ross, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
It's Thursday, and that means our Truth and Politics panel is here. Jennifer and Negon will join us after the break. Stick around. Welcome back. Video of a First Nations man being evicted from hospital in Prince Albert, Saskatchewan, and dumped in the snow has created a lot of outrage. The Prince Albert Grand Council is now looking for answers and accountability from the hospital, the Saskatchewan Health Authority, and the security company involved. For more on this, we're joined by our weekly Truth and Politics panel. Jennifer Lewitz is the CEO of Pusqua Strategies, and Negon Sinclair is a columnist with the Winnipeg Free Press. Negon, Jennifer, great to see you. Jennifer, we'll start with you as you live in Prince Albert. We have 2 videos that were shared online. What's your understanding of what happened here?
Oh, there's been a lot of people kind of floating around different opinions on what took place. You know, as many people know, an Indigenous man was essentially drugged out of the hospital by the looks of the video, and then security had intervened, and that he was left in the freezing cold temperatures and was lying on the ground. And obviously, everybody's kind of going back and forth on what took place. Some people are saying, well, this is, you know, the state that this man was in, so somehow that makes it acceptable. Having lived in Prince Albert for the majority of my life, I can say that there are, you know, places around Prince Albert that are still, you know, rooted in systemic racism. It's just the way that it's been. And I know that our hospital does deal with a lot because our hospital is the last hospital before the entire north of the province. But that doesn't mean that it shouldn't be a safe and accessible place, especially for Indigenous people. I delivered both my babies in that hospital, and interestingly enough, both times had a negative experience. That's just the reality. I do want to say, you know, thank you to all the people in the front lines, paramedics, nurses, doctors. You know, I know and understand that they deal with a great amount of things on a daily basis. But at the end of the day, when we're seeing people tossed into hospitals and left in the snow, that is completely unacceptable. And not just that, I know that our hospital has changed security companies in the last few years. My grandpa used to do security at that hospital. What has changed and why? And are the people that are doing security trauma informed? What relationship do they have with Indigenous people? Because if it is not safe or feels safe for our people to be accessing services in hospitals like that, then we have more than a conversation on our hands. We have a lot of change that needs to come.
Right. Nigan, it was minus 25 out that night. The police say they're investigating. The Saskatchewan Health Authority says it's investigating. It's been more than a week now and not a lot of info coming out. What are your thoughts?
Well, of course not, because this is absolute disaster. But this is the only one that was recorded. Imagine all the ones that have never been recorded. That is the real question at hand here. The fact that this was done with such callousness, with such overt racism, and then on top of that, really tells you a lot about the ways in which people are struggling in some of the most dire circumstances. And when they turn to institutions that are supposed to be there to assist, are supposed to be the friendliest ear of all, but in many ways are, yes, I agree with Jen, the last step in a long process of systemic racism that doesn't begin in a hospital. It actually begins throughout education, through justice, through child welfare, through the closing of places and facilities for people who are experiencing poverty, mental illness, addictions. Like this was really the end of a story that is a brutal one, and this is just one story that we get to see. Imagine all the other ones that we didn't get to see, and of course all the different stories that I frequently get emailed about people who experience racism in hospitals and with police services, with paramedics, and while I do have a sympathetic ear for people who are in difficult circumstances, I just want this to be seen as this was a litmus test or a small little vision of what's happening across the country in cities everywhere. And I hope that people take a deep interest and that this isn't a story that goes away, because what ends up happening is people don't say anything from those institutions and then just hope this problem goes away and never deal with it.
Yeah, Jen, lots of people here potentially need to be held accountable. The security company, the hospital, the health authority. Do you think we're going to get some answers here, or will this just go away?
I think when it comes to how organizations or even bodies that are provincially, are arms of our provincial health services, anything like that, it's normally the infamous an investigation will occur and we never actually hear the full outcome of what that is. What steps are actually going to be communicated and changed so this never happens again? In my opinion, I'm sorry, but a lot of eyes are on that security company right now as well. You know, Saskatchewan Health Authority does contract that service out so that's, you know, it's kind of a branch. Saskatchewan Health Authority, that's not their own security company. Well, right there, how was that security company chosen? Like I've said previously, I know Indigenous security companies in Prince Albert that, you know, they're trauma informed. They do a lot of the different events and stuff like that in the city. And I had asked the gentleman that owns that security company whether or not he even had an opportunity to bid on a contract for this hospital. And it doesn't seem like that was the case. So Saskatchewan Health Authority needs to answer as to how companies like this are hired, how they are brought in, and whether or not they understand the demographics in which they are serving. Because yes, I understand that people are going to say, well, addictions, all these things are at play. Exactly. We are in a crisis right now. And the more that we have wraparound services and the more that we have municipal, provincial, and federal governments all coming together to actually fund these things properly and to bring those wraparound services, the less that these things are likely to happen. And when they do happen, what type of training and outcomes do we have because of it?
Nigan, we kind of see videos like this almost every day on social media, unfortunately. As shocking as this incident seems, is it all that surprising?
No, it's not surprising at all. In fact, it's very much the normal situation. If you go to any hospital, any ER, particularly in areas that are high proportion Indigenous populations, we happen to see that in downtown in the Health Science Center, but it's also in downtown Vancouver, Edmonton, Calgary, Saskatoon, Regina, Thunder Bay. In any of those cities, you can see this scene. And while, yes, we're talking about Prince Albert today, you could talk about it in any of those cities. An egregious problem needs an egregious solution. And it means that governments really have to be aggressive on the issue of poverty, homelessness, addictions, but also systemic racism that it takes place that end up in situations like this. We have to hear more about it, all the things that Jen said just a minute ago. But really, when governments take risks, like for instance in Manitoba, supervised consumption sites that are in many ways have been very successful in Thunder Bay, they're taking a lot of heat in Winnipeg. The NDP government by bringing supervised consumption in. That's something we've never tried before. So when governments take a risk and try to deal with this thing aggressively, which is not an easy issue to address, the long history of Indigenous people suffering in downtown city cores, which involves all those different things, or what Jen said, the wraparound services, we have to be patient. We also have to be able to be supportive and not quickly judge, and also realize that this egregious solution is going to take generations to fix, because it takes generations to make into this terrible situation that we witnessed on a video just recently.
We're going to continue the conversation over on the podcast, but big thanks to you both. This was our 49th panel of 2025 and our last one of the year as well. So Happy New Year to you both.
Yeah, Happy New Year.
Thanks.
And be sure to tune in early in the new year. January 2nd, we'll have a full half-hour Truth and Politics panel here. Still to come tonight, we continue our 12 days of Christmas countdown and get a preview of tonight's Nation to Nation. Stay with us. Welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. And a viewer wanted to share this very festively decorated house in Winnipeg, Manitoba. They say they enjoy the lights and hope everyone has a safe and happy holiday season. You can send your pictures to share@aptn.ca for the chance to be our next photo of the day. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting on the East Coast, 11 with showers for Fredericton, cloudy, and 10 for Halifax. Minus 16 for Kuujjuaq, flurries and 7 below for Nain. Plus 5 and cloudy in Montreal, sun's out and 0 for Chibougamau. Minus 7 with sunny skies in Sault Ste. Marie, cloudy and plus 4 for Ottawa. Minus 11 in Thunder Bay, sunny and minus 15 for Sioux Lookout. Minus 28 in Churchill, 19 below for God's Lake. Minus 11 in Winnipeg, cloudy and minus 6 for Dauphin. Plus 1 in Regina and Swift Current. Minus 17 in Meadow Lake, 19 below for La Ronge. In northern Alberta, minus 21 in Peace River, 16 below for Fort Chipewyan. Minus 15 in Edmonton, sunny and a high of plus 3 for Lethbridge. 4 in Vancouver, showers and 7 for Victoria. Minus 17 for Prince George, 26 below for Dease Lake. Minus 37 in Old Crow, 44 below for Dawson. Minus 30 for Yellowknife, 34 below for Wrigley. Minus 33 in Sax Harbor, 22 below for Paulatuck. Minus 28 for Baker Lake and Chesterfield, 30 below for Arviette. Minus 32 in Resolute, minus 24 in Igloolik. Language retention has been something many have worked on this past year, including here at APTN National News. This Christmas season, we bring you our version of 12 Days of Christmas, and today we share some Tlingit words and memories as we get closer to the holidays.
Hello. Gary Sidney Johnson. When we say things like holidays, we say happy or merry or jolly is Siguwu. The word for Christmas is Kiswas in the Tlingit. And so we could say Siguwu Kiswas, Ka Siguwu Hanukkah, Ka Siguwu Kwanzaa. And so then that way we cover everything. Dleit Ka Wushtik. That means Frosty the Snowman. Dleit Ka Wushtik. It's also how we reference white people. We called them snowmen back in the day. And so growing up, I have like young childhood memories from like before 8 years old, where I'd have grandparents and aunts and uncles singing, celebrating, and meeting. And I felt like I was chasing that feeling for many, many years. And so now I'm an Indigenous Santa Claus for hire. I go by Cindy Claus. And the cool thing about this is my great-grandfather passed away when I was 13 years old. And so I'm having people come up to me now and telling me that I remind them of him and telling me stories that he used to dress up as Santa. Tliu Kwat Shil Tin is a good one. I'll say it again. Tliu Cut Shil Tin. That one's an Indigenous language word, so it has several translations, but it can mean like taking care of yourself, proceed with caution, drive safe. It means all of those things basically, but to do with an intent. One thing that it's famously used in is Santa Claus is coming to town. So this one is Dlikwachiltin Skidagachik Skayaslushik Yisakuge Cindy Plazia Ande Kwagut.
Nation to Nation host Karen Pugliese is now here to tell us about what's coming up on tonight's episode of Nation to Nation.
Coming up on Nation to Nation, 2025 is coming to a fast close. This year, there was a surprise election, there was a new prime minister, and there were some big promises made to First Nations, Inuit, and Métis. So we're taking a look back at the year that was with journalists who brought you the news from the front lines. We're on right after this show, so stay in your seat. Maybe you could grab a snack first, but we're bringing the tea. So stay around. We're coming up in just a few minutes after the news.
It's going to be a good one. Karen and her panel are less than 2 minutes away from now. We're all out of time for your APTN National News for this Thursday. You can find much more over on our website, aptnnews.ca. I'm Dennis Ward. Marcy Miigwech. Thanks for being with us. Have a great day.